Chapter 8 Zeus on the Loose. Mr. McIntosh and Mrs. Taggart were arguing right in the middle of the street. Zeus was there, too. He came over and started licking my shoe. "You and that no-good dog of yours stole my pie," Mrs. Taggart shouted, wagging her finger. "You knew your cheesecake couldn't beat my cherry crumb pie fair and square, so you cheated. You took it right off my windowsill and fed it to your dog. Fess up." Mrs. Taggart might be small, but at that moment she looked like she could win a fight against a brain-eating zombie. I jotted down everything, waiting to speak. What? Missing cherry crumb pie. Where? Mrs. Taggart's house. When? Within the last hour. "I would never steal your pie," Mr. McIntosh argued, "and Zeus was on his leash when the pie was stolen. He couldn't have eaten it." Mrs. Taggart looked down at Zeus. His little tail hid between his legs. "Besides," Mr. McIntosh continued, "I don't need to cheat to win. I beat you once before, and I could have beaten you again this year if someone hadn't stolen my eggs. Everyone knows the only reason your cheesecake beat my pie 2 years ago was because it was a horrible year for cherries," said Mrs. Taggart. She glared at Mr. McIntosh. Mr. McIntosh glared back. Finally, I saw my opportunity to jump in. "Excuse me, Mr. McIntosh, but earlier today you said, and I quote, 'Sweet smells make my animals go crazy, especially poor Zeus.' Are you—" "You wrote that down," he interrupted. "I'm a reporter. I write everything down," I replied. "So are you sure that Zeus couldn't have had something to do with Mrs. Taggart's missing pie?" Before Mr. McIntosh could answer, Zeus's leash slipped out of his hand. "Zeus!" screamed Mr. McIntosh, chasing his dog down the street. Mrs. Taggart shook her head. "See, he can't control that dog." "Mrs. Taggart," I said, trying to get my interview back on track, "where's your pie dish?" "I have no clue. His wild pie-stealing dog must have run off with it," she replied. "What does your dish look like?" I asked. "It's a blue, one-of-a-kind ceramic pie dish with roses painted on it. I'll never be able to replace it," Mrs. Taggart said as she headed home. I wish that dog would have saved me a piece of pie," Izzy said. "I don't think Zeus stole the pie," I said. I had a feeling there was more to this sickeningly sweet story. I made a few notes. So here's her list of notes. Pie dish is blue with roses on it. A ceramic pie dish is heavy. Where is the pie dish? A tiny dog can't carry a heavy pie dish. Is Mr. McIntosh telling the truth? "Come on, Hildy, we still have a lead to investigate," said Izzy. "You're right," I agreed. "Let's get to the Kind Cat Cafe."